undivided attention, and thank you and welcome. See, that's what I get a chance to do. Kiss all the beautiful ladies and get away with it. Carry on. You have the floor. Oh, this is yours. Thank you.
In the name of Isis, Oshun, Ogun, Esli, of Jean-Jacques Dessalines, of Boukman, Toussaint, Nzinga, Aizan, I greet you in Haitian traditional terms, honnête. The response is respect. In the name of all those who fight against physical domination, intellectual occupation, and spiritual takeover and annihilation, I greet you in the words of fighters, liberty or death. We are in a time where we have to be conscious that the fight is about being free or being dead. There isn't very much in between. Whether we do breathe, I think they call it, or not, if you don't know who you are, if you don't know what your mission is on this earth, if you don't know your mission, then you don't know how you should go about doing what you should do, then of course you are not alive. No matter how many things you pile up someplace in your name. This evening we're going to take a very brief look at a few women in Haitian history. Yes, these women are often not mentioned. If they're mentioned, it's just a name as somebody's wife when they're mentioned in the history book. But I'm going to give you just a little look as to what they did, which will show you how much what we call history is at least long-sided. But also I hope to take the time to give you a quick overview of a few women so you have an idea what women have done. So most of you here are familiar with the masculine side of Haitian history. Some elements, most of you probably do know about Toussaint Louverture, and you probably do know about Jean-Jacques Dessalines, or about Boukman. But you don't know who brought them, who taught them, who made them do. And that's who we're going to take a very quick look tonight first. But I would feel that I'm all one family, whether Arawak or African. So when the Europeans arrived in the sea, they call today the Caribbean Sea, the so-called big-time discovery, Christopher Columbus. As the story came down to us, and as it is written in his own journal, he could not decide. He went through several islands, plant his cross, and plant his sword, and have some kind of ceremony swearing that this land is from now on belongs to the Queen of Spain. But he didn't stay anywhere. He was afraid to settle someplace, so he would go back to his village. But after a while, his men were fed up with living on the boat. They started fighting among themselves. And they set fire on the fire quarter. In the fight, one of the boats started to burn. And Wamanagari, one of the Arawak rulers, sent a team to go and see what was going on and help if there are any people to help there. And actually, that's the way the Europeans first came to Haiti. They didn't decide to settle there because they thought it was so beautiful and looked so much like Spain. But the Arawak went to save them out at sea. And Columbus mentioned that he could not believe that people would swim the distance that these people swam to come and get them. And he could not believe they could do it as quickly as they did. And they took the people that were in water, brought them ashore, came back to get more of their things, and that's when the other two boats came into in port. So that's the way they came in, not what you've been taught so far. Now, as they came in, there were 5 grand chiefs on the island. One of them was a woman, Anakauna. She was ruling the southern part, right of the Agua. And this woman fought longer in all the years and all the time. It was Wakanagai, Kochimarama, Guayunex, and Kaunabo were all killed. And the woman was the last one to remain and continue to fight. She fought longer than anyone else. She fought the Europeans for 10 years. And they could not take her militarily. And there we have a letter from Ovando, the Spanish ruler of the time, who wrote to the queen, militarily they cannot take this woman, they have to use Rus to deal with her. That's when he came up with the plan that they're going to have this big peace deal, a big peace negotiation, and she agreed to go and talk to him. And she refused to go where he was and said, okay, you come where I am. And so she arranged to receive them. And when they came in, she had food and dancing and song and everything that you do to welcome people. And after they ate well, Ovando put his hand on his cross, and that was the sign to start slaughtering and killing the people. And when they took Anakauna, whom he said again in his journey, he wouldn't give her more than 25. But yet, he knew she couldn't be 25, because she had a daughter who had several children. She was a grandmother. And according to how they try to figure out what the years were, it is estimated she was about 60. But he felt she looked 25. So usually most people write about Anakauna, describe her as a young girl, 18, 25, but in fact, they met at least 60-year-old woman. And this woman, when they captured her, they tied her behind a horse. And they drove from Leogan, what is today Leogan, Haiti, in the south of Haiti, to Santo Domingo, what is today the capital of Santo Domingo, tied behind a horse, dragged up and down the mountains. So she arrived practically with no flesh on, but yet she was alive. And they had what's supposed to be some kind of trial. She was found guilty, and the sentence was that she would hung and burnt the next morning. And they asked her if she had a last word. And her last word was, what is most important in life is not the fact that we die, because that will happen to everybody. But what is most important is to die with a word in your mouth that will keep the others fighting. And that's what this woman has left for us. Don't scream, don't yell, don't cry when you're dying. Think of what you can say to those who are there that will keep the fight going. And she told them, Haiti is the land of freedom. Haiti will be free no matter how long it takes for this freedom to come. They will not be able to do what they want to do with this country, with this land. So this is Anakauna, the woman who was ruling Haiti before the Europeans came. Down the road, we have Cecile Fatima. This was about 70 years old. Some of you have maybe read about ancient history, know about Wakaima, which is considered, actually right now, the United Nations has a program where they're going to choose, they have chosen August 23rd as the International Day of the Abolition of Slavery. And they claim that they choose this because of what happened in Haiti. What happened in Haiti is this, according to what you will read in the book today. They'll talk to you about Wakaima. That's where all the different Africans who were enslaved they decided to meet on the night of August 14, August 15. They met that night to decide, what are we going to do? Are we going to stay here and stay enslaved for the rest of our lives and our children's lives? Or are we going to do something about the situation? And at first, of course, it was a long debate. People were saying, well, we don't have no weapons, we have no money, we can't do this, and we can't do that. All of the history books tell you about what Bookman said, and I will tell you a little later too. But what they don't tell you is the woman who organized this Congress, Cecile Fatima, she arranged it. And they said this woman walked from plantation to plantation without having any, you know that a slave could not just get up and go. You have to have permission to move from one spot to the next. And no one could understand how she managed to go from places that are very far from her own plantation at night, she could only do it at night, come back and, be there the next morning when they're checking where is everybody. But she is the one who organized all this, and they met on August 14, in the night of August 14, to decide what they were going to do. As the discussion got very hot, and a lot of people were debating, well, mostly mentioning what we can't do because what we didn't have, a man called Bookman Duty rose up, and he said what historians have recorded as Bookman's prayer. And it goes like this. It says, the one who created the sun that shines upon our head, who makes the waves in the sea, and makes the thunder round into the clouds. This one is our Father, our own Father, and he watches over us. He sees everything, and he sees what the white man is doing to us. That is why he orders us that we must put a stop to this. We must end this. We must wrong this wrong. We must right this wrong. He promises that he will help us, but the work must be ours. And he gives us as a guide, he tells us to listen to the voice of liberty, which speaks in each and every one of our hearts, who is our chief, liberty. And that's what Bookman said. And from this, everybody else starts saying, yeah, that's right. If God is our Father, there's nothing we can't do, then of course we cannot remain slaves. We must change the situation. And everyone is agreed that they would go ahead and find a way to fight off the situation. But the organizer of this Congress is Cecile Fatima. This woman died at the age of 112 years old. And they tell us no slave, no person could survive slavery more than what? 45 years. And they said was the limit. She lived to be 112. As a matter of fact, as you look into Haitian history, you cannot find any of the revolutionaries, female or male, who was younger than 50. They told us there's no such thing as slaves over 45. After 45, you will look like a 99-year-old somebody and you couldn't do anything. Yet most of our people began life at 45. Here we have Toya. This is a woman from Dahomey. She was an Amazon in the Dahomeyan army. You probably know Dahomey at the time had two armies, a male army and a female army, each with their own mission. So she is among the Amazon who was captured and brought into slavery. And Amazons never stayed into slavery. They either kill themselves or kill the ones who's bringing slavery up on them. But they never remain on the plantation. So as the story goes for this woman, she said that she had decided after a few days on the plantation that she was going to get away from all this. And since she could not see, she didn't have any people who spoke her language, there was nobody to organize with, she decided death was the way out. So after a while, she did manage to run away and go into a forest to give herself death. but it couldn't be done any old kind of way. She had to get the right leaves and prepare certain things and do different ceremonies so she would go in the right manner. And so as she was looking for the leaves, she heard a woman crying in the bush. So she went to see. This woman was about to give birth to a child. She helped the woman deliver, and the woman died. Before she died, she asked Toya, please take care of my baby. So now Toya, who came here to die, has the responsibility to take care of some baby boy. And she doesn't want to be in slavery. How do you take care of a baby boy in this situation? So she decides to go back to the plantation with the baby. And that baby later on, you know who he is? But before she goes back, she says she takes the baby up to one night to the sky, raised the baby up in the sky, and said to this child, I will remain alive to help you grow up strong. But you must do for this land what I could not do for Dahomey. I could not keep Dahomey free, so you must keep this land free. And this is the woman who raised Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Taught him how to use a sword, taught him how to use a knife at first, later on when he was bigger, a sword. She said that often they were separated. He was sold into a different plantation, she was sold into another one, but very often life brought them back again, sold into the same plantation. So she continued to have the opportunity to help raise him. And she, later on, had her own band, her own troop of warriors. She built her own troop during the Revolution time. And she was there for independence. And when she died in 1804, Dessalines was in the middle of some big meeting, and when they come to tell him that she was very sick. And he said, no, this woman raised me. Everything must stop, I must go to her. She gave me my first bath, I must give her her last bath. And Dessalines personally, Emperor Dessalines, bathed Toya her last bath before she was buried. But that, I have not read this, even though there are numerous newspaper articles that mention what this woman said, because these people were interviewed all the time during that period. Journalists were no different in 1800s than they are in today. But I don't find that in any of the history books written about Haiti. Here we have Lieutenant Salit Bello. Yes, not only we had powerful men fighting, powerful officers, military men, we also had women. We have Lieutenant Salit Bello here. Down a little further. This is Captain Guillemette Charlot. These women had fantastic reputation. As you read the newspapers and magazines of the time, you will discover these people. They had reputations like incredible. And were in all kinds. There were a lot of troops, in the different troops that fought for Haiti's liberation. There were mixed troops, a lot of mixed troops. Toussaint Louverture talked a lot about the mixed troops. In fact, Toussaint told us, many letters, he said that most of the troops were made up of at least 1/5 to 1/3 female. All the fighting troops were made up of at least 1/5 to 1/3 of females. And that is not counting the troops that were made of females only. There were troops, there was nobody in them but women. But there were a lot of mixed troops. This is Marie-Claire Heureuse Félicité Bonheur Dessalines. This woman is a woman who will become Dessalines' wife, but her own story is also in her own right. She has a story of her own. First of all, this woman lived 103 years old. That's another person who went straight through slavery, and 100, 101, 102, 103. She was not a fighting person. She believed in peace. She was a health person. She worked a lot with natural health. She used vegetables and fruits to treat various diseases. As a matter of fact, there's on record a Swiss banker who came to Haiti in 1807 with his surgeon and his entire staff because he had heard so much about how this woman, when she had different ways that when you had a wound, she could cure you and not leave any marks on your skin. So he wanted to have his surgery done in Haiti so that she would be there to treat him and so he would not have scars. Okay? So her thing is treating people. She had decided that her contribution in the revolution, she was not a fighting, as I said, a fighter. So her thing was, after a battle, she goes on the battlefield after a battle. Because at the time, the rule was, if you can't get up at the end of the battle, you are considered dead. Nobody's going to help you off the battlefield. So she would go on the battlefield after the battle and separate the wounded from the dead and carry some of the wounded to her home and treat them. So that's what her contribution to the Revolutionary War. And it is one day, as she was doing this on the battlefield, that Jean-Jacques Dessalines met her and became madly in love with her. When he asked her to marry him, she said no, she didn't want to marry because she felt marriage has a way of removing people, deterring people from their mission in life. And since she has a mission, she did not want to take the responsibility of a home. Dessalines said, no, on the contrary, if you're my wife, you will have more means to carry on your mission. So they had a lot of talk about it, and in the end she said, okay, I have 4 conditions. If we get on those 4 conditions, then the marriage would be possible. The first one is, you have a lot of children out there. Your father, a lot of children. You must recognize all of your children. 2, you must provide for these women to raise the means for them to raise the children. Number 3, marriage must keep me free, must leave me free to think, speak, and act according to my own convictions. And number 4, your enemies are not automatically my enemies. The first 3 didn't bother him too much, but the last one, he got very upset. He said, this woman is crazy. I am here doing a revolution and you're telling me I'm going to walk into my house and find some Frenchman sitting down talking to you? What do you think this is? She says, well, that's the only way we can marry. Otherwise, you go your way, I go my way. But if we can agree to this, because any person can make a mistake. If I have to be automatically enemy to somebody because you enemy to him, we don't have a chance of knowing if something is not right in your point of view. I have to have the freedom to re-examine things. So in the end, he agreed, and they got married in 1801. And through the course of their lives, and I'm going to give you one example. One time there was an attempt to assassinate. And among the people arrested, there is this French botanist, Descourtil, was also accused of being one of the people who plotted against them. So they were looking for Descourtil. Dessalines was looking for him. And at the end of the day, he comes home furious and he's telling her what happened and whatnot. And says he remains one person to find. He has to find this Descourtil because he's part of all this. But what he didn't know is Descourtil had already reached, when he heard that they were looking, he came to Mrs. Dessalines and tell her, here's what happened, I was not involved, etc., etc. So she said, okay, I'm going to talk to Dessalines, and if what you say proved to be true, I will try to defend your case. So Dessalines came and he's saying how he's going to take this man, he's going to have him shot, and this and that, and Pharaoh is telling him, well, as a ruler, that's not correct. There is a law, there are different people to do different things. You're the one who's involved. You should not be involved in judging the case. The case should go to a tribunal, and they should decide who is guilty and who is not. In the end, she convinced him. And But both of them, one knows the other very well. And at the end of the conversation, he says to her, "You must know where he is." She says, "Yes, he's under our bed." So he sent for somebody to arrest the guy, and a tribunal judged the different people who were accused, and it was proven that this man was not, in fact, part of the plot. But it's a good thing they had this agreement that she did not have to be automatically the, his enemies didn't have to be hers automatically. We'll take a quick look also at Suzanne Simon Louverture, who's Toussaint's wife. This woman is a very large woman, 250, 300 pounds, they say. She had a very quiet life. Didn't want to be involved in politics, didn't want to have nothing to do with Toussaint's public life. As a matter of fact, she refused to even accompany him to receptions. Because her thing was she has to take care of her home, take care of her gardening. She was a fabulous farmer. She could grow. They tell you, when this woman puts something into the soil, it has to give, and much. And so that was her concentration, that was her work. Until they came and take Toussaint to exile in France. And they take him with his wife and children and everybody around her. And when they got to France, Napoleon ordered, he said it's not necessary to torture Toussaint. He will never speak. But every torture that he should receive must go to his wife. His wife was tortured from the time she arrived in France, and even after Toussaint's death, they continued to torture her. In 1805, when she finally was released from the jails of France, they had removed every single nail on her fingers and toes, broke her bones in many different places, and as she went in, a woman of 300 plus pounds, she came out less than 90 pounds. Yes. She was first released to England. England was the big humanitarian at the time. They are the ones who convinced France to release her and whatnot. Once she got to England, this is 1805. Haiti is independent, right? So she could be just brought back to her home. But of course, that would be too nice to expect from people like these people that we know so well. So England told her, "Oh no, you couldn't go to Haiti because now Dessalines is ruling Haiti and he's looking for you to kill you." She says, "How could it be? He is I don't know what it is in English, my mon compère. I am his child's godmother, and he is the godfather of one of my children. So we are very tight. There's no way Dessalines will want to harm me." They said, "You don't know him. This new Dessalines here, he's after you." France refused to allow this woman to go back to Haiti. But the climate of, England. But the climate of England, the British climate, was very bad for her health. And at some point they were afraid that she might die, but they didn't want her to die in their country. So they told her, since they were very, very good and kind and humanitarian, and they would send her to some place similar to Haiti, but which is not Haiti. So they sent her to Kingston, Jamaica, 17 minutes by plane. And but convinced that there was no way she could go to Haiti because she would be harmed. So that's Suzanne, and she died there in Kingston, Jamaica. The last woman I will mention to you is Marie-Jeanne. This woman was the head of the security force, which gave security to people like Toussaint, Dessalines, Christophe. He himself said he never feels secure unless Marie-Jeanne's troop is with him. She's a great person in disguise. They tell her you never know when she comes in front of you. She hated the term mulatto. She says, don't call her that. She does not have a mule. Neither her father nor her mother is a mule. So there's no way you could call her mulatto. So she says, you could call me a mixed blood if you want, but don't call me a mulatto. And she had a troop. She had organized, she's one of those revolutionary women who had a troop, about 300 women, all female troop. And they were fighting for liberation until the thing became more organized and an army, the Liberation Army was created. So since she had promised to her mother, who headed the troop before her, that she could never mix the troop with another troop. The idea was they could support another troop that's doing something positive in the way of revolution and freedom, but they could not become one with anyone. So she could not join the army. But they worked with the army, always as independent. And they say 1 minute she would come to you as a 15-year-old boy, black boy. The next minute she'll be some white man colonizer. The next minute she was female, she was young, she was old, she was mixed blood, she was white. She really had this capacity to switch up a lot, and she did a lot of the spying. In fact, she created in independent Haiti what would be the first CIA bureau. The woman had 2,000 spies working for her around the world. 2,000 spies. Jewish, French, Germany, all of that's part of, she's a major part as to the success of the revolution. Because it was because of the information this woman would gather around Europe from all her spies working all over for her that allowed Toussaint Dessalines to the right strategy to counteract the moves that the various European countries were doing to keep Haiti into slavery. So Marie-Jeanne is, and nobody knows how she, after they killed Dessalines, they went about killing a lot of the people who were closest to him. But no one can say for sure, or no one has an idea as to what happened to her. And my opinion, and that's only an opinion, this one was so great at disguising, she probably turned into something else. I don't know. But something. And besides, even Dessalines, I came across 2 quotes where Dessalines said, he was never sure when he was in her presence. It was after when they worked together, it took him a while before he was sure this is Marie-Jeanne that was there, because she would come up in so many different ways. So if he was not sure about her, I don't know too many people could recognize her really. So this is some of the fabulous women that I've come across in studying contribution of women in Haitian history. So I wanted to bring that part. The second part, Vodoo, which means be aware of the spirit in all things. That's what the word Vodoo means. To be aware that the spirit is the guiding force in everything that you see. It's not the matter that is important. It is the spirit. So every time you are aware and act as such, if I know that spirit is what matters, then I also know that I have the power to do all kinds of things. If I have the right mind, the right spirit, and if I can use it properly, then I can do all kinds of things. If I'm limited by the illusion of matter, then I'm also limited in what I can do, where I can go. I'm limited in space and time. So basically, most people have this concept, this idea of Vodoo, which is what the Europeans have put in their newspapers, in their movies. You know, you take a doll and you stick it, and somebody someplace dies, and you know, that kind of crap. Which has absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about. My own analysis is this. Every people to whom it is given the opportunity to come with a concept of the divine, because that's what, when you create a religion, that's what it is. You come with a concept of the divine in your relationship to it. Okay? The Jews came with a concept of the divine, their relationship to it. Christians, and I'm not talking about Romans or Italians, okay? Know that Christianity, where was Christianity? Ethiopia. Okay. So they had a concept of the divine and their relationship to it. So they brought in their expression of this concept is what we call the Christian religion. Now, as different people take a hold of somebody's concept or come up with their own, it will give a new religion. Whether I go and borrow yours and change here a little bit there, or I just sit back and close my eyes and come up with my own concept, it will still be a religion. So what are the fundamental concepts in Vodoo? Very simple. If you know anything about Vodoo, you probably have heard about loi, the word loi, which means law. It's written L-O-A, but it's the same as L-A-W. Okay? Or in French, the word is L-O-I, loi, which means a rule, a principle that you must know. And in Vodoo, you talk about serving the law, serving the loi. Okay? You're not talking about adoring some spirit, some concept, some image. You're talking about serving. So if you have laws that you must know and that you must serve, then there's something that you must accomplish. If we look back a little bit, the mother of Vodoo is Ifa in Africa.
Yes.
Okay? When you look into Ifa, you find that Ifa tells you the purpose for man being here is to build good character. Know who you are, build good character, and act in accord with your spirit. If you do that, you're in heaven. It's very simple. It's not about sticking dolls, it's about understanding. Now, when the people create their own expression, what we did in Haiti, fed by Ifa, we reshaped it and created our own expression as to what is divine and what our relationship is to it. And every book, what you call spiritual books, holy books, okay, you will find that they say, in different ways, but they all say the same thing. There'll be something like somewhere in the beginning, God created by his words, he brought all of this creation about, right? Scientists say it a little differently. They say Big Bang. What is Big Bang? A big sound. Okay, so by the sound, matter came to be. Okay, no disagreement there. You take the Holy Quran, it will still tell you, through his mouth, everything came. Same thing. So as I look at all this, and I look at our concepts, I look at all these different books. What is the Bible? That the actual Bible, not the Book of the Dead, not the original, okay? But those that they've made up from. You have, it's the history of a people in a space and time and their connection to the divine. You take the Torah. What is the Torah? It's the history of the Jews and their connection to the divine. So I said, well, let me see. What is my history? What is there in my arsenal? And as I look at our IT's arsenal, I say, okay, the principal rule, I find this law everywhere, that out of the mouth, the sound which must bring about what must be, must come out of somebody's mouth. And in our history, we have somebody called Bookman Duty, who one night was the first person to put into clear terms, here's what must happen. You must know that you are God's child. I say, you're God's child. You must know that he wants you to free yourself from this slavery here. You must know that he will make you strong and support you in what you do. You must fight against these people, and you must listen to the voice of liberty, which speaks in the heart of each and every one of you. Even as I analyze the name of this man, there is no hazard. Everything has a reason. His name is Bookman, the man of the book. What is a book? The book brings the words. Bookman what? Bookman Duty. duty is. And he's the one who ignites the fire of revolution in our country. Down the road, I look at Toussaint Louverture. This man is named as a slave. He's called François Dominique Breda. François, which means belonging to France and the French people. Dominique, born on a Sunday. Breda, carrying a load. As he began to fight, as he entered the Revolutionary War, he gets rid of this first name, François. He gets rid of this second name, Dominique, and he takes the name Toussaint, All Saints. And finally, he gets rid of Breda and takes the name Louverture, the one who opens the way. So what's his name? In the Revolution, he is the man who represents all the saints and who opens the way. In Vodoo, we have a law called Legba. Legba is the one who gives power to all the other laws. And they say Legba is the one who opens the gate, opens the way. So what did we see? As we analyze the physical characteristics of Legba and the physical characteristic of Toussaint, we find them practically identical. As we look at the function of Legba and the function of Toussaint, again, we find them the same. As we look at their mission, we find them the same. So we find Legba in Toussaint. We find Ogun in Dessalines. We find Oshun in Marie-Claire Heureuse. And finally, what you see is that in your belief system, you have a knowledge of yourself. If you know your own belief system, then you know who you are. And you can understand what your mission is. And you have a better understanding as to how you should act to be successful in your life. That, to me, is the most important thing that happened in the years of the revolution in Haiti, is that these people did not just go out there fighting. They were not just good fighters, strong fighters, but these were people who knew who they were. So everything could become a weapon in their hands. And when they didn't need a weapon, everything would become a tool in their hands. You're sitting on chairs right now, right? Those chairs are what? Are they weapons or tools? Both. It's a tool. As you sit on them, they are tools. You use them to accomplish something, to hold your weight. It's a tool. Now, if we were to be attacked the next minute, what would happen? Intelligent people would get up off their seats and take the chairs, and then the chairs would be what? They would become our weapons, of course. Everything in front of you can always be either your tool or your weapon according to circumstances. And that's what intelligent people know. Depending on what's going on, you don't want to use this as a tool, as a weapon, when there is no war going on. It's a time for using it as a tool. And you should be able to know everything that you have can either be a tool or a weapon. Circumstances will determine what is the best way to use it. And circumstances, in the circumstance, you have to know who you are. If you don't know who you are, you cannot judge the circumstance properly. Then you will have a tendency to take a tool and make it a weapon, and take a weapon and use it as a tool. And that's the most important thing you need to know. Who you are, know what the circumstances call for, and make a use of everything that is in front of you. That's what real wealth is all about. It's not accumulation of things. You can have all the things accumulated somewhere, but if you don't know what to use and when, You don't know at what moment a time to be silent and a time to speak. That's what eloquent people know. We all can talk. But when you can talk and touch and affect others, it's because you know to make the difference, clear difference between silence and speaking. It's not what you say. It's not what you say. It's how you say it. Thank you for your attention.
Born in Jamaica?
Yes, he is from Jamaica. He was sold into Saint Domingue when he was 12 because he was already not very submissive and accepting of the situation in Jamaica.
Also, in C.L.R. James' book on the Black Jacobins, if my memory serves me right, there was a song that we used to sing in Vodoo. And the chorus of this song was that we must kill the slave. Anybody who enslaved us, we must kill them. It used to be a song that we would sing. And of course the Catholic Church took that song away from us. Well, that's correct.
There's a lot that is being taken away from us. And as a matter of fact, the taking away has not stopped. It continues every single day, even today in IT, with what our so-called intellectuals are producing. It's showing that there's very little understanding of who we are and what our history is all about. As a matter of fact, a big deal a few months ago was that some Protestant church had decided that they were going to uproot, would be the word, I don't know. My English is very weak these days. To dig out the whole Bookman. They want Bookman out of the history. Because all of that stuff is voodoo, magic, and blah, blah, blah. They have all kinds of excuses, and they want that removed from the history, and they want to burn the place where the ceremony took place, where the Congress met, where the slaves had met to discuss it, and they want to build a church there.
He might burn it down.
Huh?
Oh, he might burn it down. Or sometimes, Bookman, his spirit might burn down the church.
Easily. I don't
Okay.
think they're going to make it.
What I have to say is, about 6 or 8 years ago, I was listening to family radio. That is Pat Robertson. And this was one morning. He generally come on in the morning. And he said the reason why Haiti was in the trouble it is because before the revolution, with their voodoo, they had asked Satan to grant them the victory. So Satan granted the victory. So this is what the problem that they have. And I said to myself, no, if God would allow these Africans to kill all these righteous white people, then you want to tell me that Satan is stronger than God?
Very good comment. Yes. Well, there's a lot of this kind of comment throughout IT and all the different situations. But just to make a Wakanagari is the first, the Arawak mover who sent the people to get the white man from the sea as they had set fire to one of their boats and were in trouble out at sea. When they came in, of course, in the first pages of his journal, Columbus had no words important enough to describe how good these people were, how wonderful they were. They didn't know anything about stealing. They ignored lying. These were people straight out of God's heaven, okay? Now, as he passed a rule that every Arawak must bring him a cup of gold a day. And some people started coming up short. They only had half, or a third, or three-quarters. And the rule was if your cup was not full, they cut your left hand. And if you bring a second time a cup that's not full, they cut your right hand. And when they cut your hand, you cannot be treated or anything. You have to bleed to death or whatever. So as he, then it started changing. These are wicked people. These are conniving people. Liars like these he had never seen.
And warlike people.
Of course. Wicked, and that's when they became, when in the beginning of his book, they don't eat flesh. They only eat vegetables. After the law of the gold and everything else goes into place, they become cannibals.
Yes.
But I only asked one question. I said, according to them again, because we always have to go back to them for almost all the facts, right? Because we have nothing of our own. They claim that there were, some of them say, 1.5 million Arawaks on the island. Some of them say as many as 3.5 million Arawaks on the island. Others say, there are even some others who says there were 10 million people on this island at the arrival of Columbus. Now, once you know if it was 1.5 or if it was 10 million. But irregardless of which, 11 years later, they said there was less than 100,000 souls.
Yeah.
20 years later, there was nothing. Now, how come less than 10,000 civilized white men come into an island where there is 1.5 million cannibals, and after 11 years, the 1.5 million cannibals have disappeared, and then the 10 million civilized white men, the 10,000 civilized white men are there? I have a problem.
The white man.
I have a big problem.
Yeah, because, now, I know Vodoo is the original word and it's from Africa, right?
Speak a louder, please.
Oh, okay. I said, I know that Vodoo is the proper word from Africa. Now, is it true, because I've heard different theories, is it true that the word voodoo came from the French and it was some woman or something from France, or that's what the French people started calling it? And then also there's another woman, I can't remember her name, but she took voodoo to New Orleans, and she was a big, a big important person, after curing people. I forgot her name, I read something, but.
Well, there is, I don't know if the French coined it or couldn't pronounce it and mispronounce it or whatever. There's all kinds of possibility as to how Vodou became voodoo and vodou and whatever else it has. There are about 5 or 6 words that they've come up with. They don't even agree among themselves what they say in French.
Oh,
Okay? So I would venture into trying to explain why, how come, and no, I can't deal with that. But what I can say for sure, as far as the spread of the belief, and we have to understand that in both, there are 3 cases. When they finished slaughtering all the Arawaks in Haiti, they sent for Africans to repopulate the land and continue their enslavement and exploitation system. Now, as they went on into different islands and depopulated and annihilated the different populations, like in the case of Trinidad, it was 2,500 Haitians, no, 2,350 Haitians that they brought to Trinidad to repopulate Trinidad. Which is why you will find that Trinidadians of 70 years and less speak Haitian, just like us. Because until they started a big program of schooling and getting everybody, in speaking English and whatnot, the average Trinidadian spoke Haitian, okay? What they call Creole. Now they did the same, there's the same thing as the same case of from Haiti, they took a number of people and repopulated St. Lucia. They did the same thing in different parts, in some.
Martinique.
I'm not sure. I don't know about Martinique, but I know in New Orleans
Yeah.
there was a group of Haitians they brought in at some certain point to certain areas. So I know that part of the transfer is like physical people. They just come in, they say, okay, they want 2,000 of these beasts there. And they count 2,000, they put on a boat, and they bring them someplace else. They don't care if she's your wife, and this is a husband, and this is the sister, and that one, but I have my 2,000, I don't need that one. That's it. Okay, so a lot of, the cutting of the family, the cutting and recutting, it didn't happen just once. Besides the grabbing people in Africa and taking people and separating and smashing families apart, it continued throughout the years. We have to understand that also.
I wanted to say that I've heard that many of them claim that many slaves, their families did not make many attempts at all to stay together, but there is documented evidence that many slaves did, families tried to stay together.
Of course, who wrote the stuff? Okay, what do you want to, okay, he also is, he's telling us, and he's doing a good job. A lot of us are swallowing it. Oh, well, it was your own brother that sold you. Sure. Yes, it happened. It's true. In how many cases? Between those of us that were sold and those you went with your net and grabbed like animal and brought into the, how many of them were? I wasn't there too. So if the one who committed the crime is telling you about how it went down, of course, he's going to do his very best to put it in such terms that at the end, look at, hey, listen, and white man, I admire him for this. He's really good.
Yeah.
He can come into your home. He will rape your mama, slaughter your dad, kill your brother, do something to your sister, your cousin, your grandma, your great-grandma. And when he's all done, he tells you the story, and you're going to say, oh, the poor white man. Boy, these